My sister didn't hesitate. Her voice was clean practiced. It's only for family. I stood there with my phone pressed to my ear, realizing I'd just been uninvited from my parents' anniversary party, the one I helped pay for. In one sentence, I stopped being a daughter and became an inconvenience. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I felt something colder settle in. Because if I wasn't family anymore, I wasn't obligated either, and the choice I made next would unravel everything they thought they controlled. Before I tell you how it unfolded, tap like comment where you're listening from. If you felt erased, share it. My name is Larissa. I'm in my mid-30s and I make my living as a freelance photographer. Nothing flashy, no company name worth dropping, just me, my camera, and long hours chasing light that feels honest. I've always liked work where results speak quietly for themselves. Maybe that's why my family learned early on that I wouldn't make noise even when I was carrying more than my share. From the outside, my family looked steady, respectable, the kind neighbors described as close. Holiday cards on the fridge, framed photos lining the hallway, smiles that knew how to hold for just long enough. Inside, though, roles were fixed early. My sister was the one everyone talked about. Talented, charismatic, the center of every story. My brother was the planner, the voice of reason, always explaining why things were the way they were. And then there was me, reliable, quiet, the one who made problems disappear without asking to be seen doing it. Money was how I helped, not because anyone demanded it outright, but because the need was always implied. A message about repairs that couldn't wait, bills that stacked up faster than expected, a rough patch that would only be temporary. I sent payments the way some people send apologies quickly, instinctively without wanting credit. Every transfer felt like proof I belonged. Like if I kept the foundation solid, no one would question my place in the family. Gratitude came in small doses. A brief thank you, a soft, "you're a lifesaver." Then the subject would change. No one asked how it felt to always be the one filling the gap. No one wondered what it cost me to stay that dependable. I told myself that's just how families work. Someone has to be the steady one. When my parents' anniversary started coming up, I heard about it sideways. Not from them, not from an invitation, just hints. A comment about dates, a remark about how everyone would be together. I assumed my name was already included the way it always had been. Why wouldn't it be? I'd help cover the costs. I'd supported them for years. I was their daughter. That assumption lasted right up until it didn't. Right up until I realized I wasn't part of the picture they were celebrating. And that realization didn't hit all at once. It crept in quietly, the way truth does when it's been waiting for you to catch up. By the time I understood what was really happening, it was already too late to pretend this was just a misunderstanding. The weeks leading up to the anniversary moved strangely. Nothing dramatic happened at first. No arguments, no blow-ups, just small requests spaced close enough together that I felt them before I questioned them. My sister texted one afternoon, casual as ever. She needed help covering travel costs for a relative. "It's not much," she said. The number wasn't outrageous, but it wasn't small either. I stared at the message longer than usual. Something in me hesitated. Not because I couldn't afford it, but because I was tired of pretending these asks were temporary. So I said no. Just one word, no explanation, no apology attached. The reply came fast. Not angry, disappointed. The kind that's meant to bruise quietly. She told me she didn't expect this from me, that everyone was counting on things going smoothly, that I was putting unnecessary stress on our parents during an important time. The guilt slid in on reflex. I almost gave in. Almost. But I didn't. That's when the temperature changed. Calls slowed. Messages became shorter. When I reached out, conversations ended quickly, wrapped in politeness so thin it felt sharp. I told myself I was imagining it. Families go through phases. People get busy. But the silence had weight. It pressed in steady and deliberate. A few days later, I finally asked the question I'd been circling. I called my sister and mentioned the anniversary directly. I said I wanted to confirm details. Dates, location, simple things. There was a pause. Not a dropped call, not bad service. A pause long enough to say she was choosing her words, then she said it again. "It's only for family." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't explain. She said it like it was obvious, like she was reminding me of something I should have known all along. I remember looking at my hand while she spoke, noticing how tightly I was gripping the phone. My knuckles had gone pale. I asked her what she meant. Another pause. Then something sharper. She said it wasn't personal. That space was limited. That decisions had already been made. She said my parents wanted a simple celebration. She said a lot of things without saying the one thing that mattered. I wasn't invited, not forgotten, not overlooked, excluded. After the call ended, I sat in my car with the engine off, listening to the faint hum of traffic nearby. I replayed the last few years in my head. Every payment, every late-night conversation where I reassured them things would be okay. Every time I stepped in so no one else had to feel uncomfortable. I thought about the guest list I'd heard mentioned, the people who made the cut. Friends, relatives, neighbors, people who hadn't helped keep the lights on. That's when it landed fully. I hadn't been funding a family. I'd been financing a version of it that didn't need me present. I wasn't a daughter in that picture. I was a line item, useful, silent, replaceable. And once I saw it, that clearly I couldn't unsee it. What broke me wasn't the party. It was understanding that this wasn't a mistake, it was a choice, one they were comfortable making. That night, everything went quiet in a way I wasn't used to. Not the comforting kind of quiet, the kind that makes you notice the hum of the fridge, the tick of the wall clock, the way your own breathing sounds unfamiliar when no one else is asking anything from you. I didn't cry. That surprised me. I kept waiting for the wave to hit the anger, the sadness, the urge to explain myself to someone who might finally understand. It never came. What settled in instead was a clear, almost clinical calm. I sat at my desk and opened my laptop not to work but out of habit. The screen glowed back at me with half-edited photos, light and shadow. People framed carefully so you could see who they were without being told. I realized I'd been doing the opposite in my own life, overexposing myself so others could stand comfortably in the frame. I closed the laptop. For the first time in years, I didn't think about what I owed anyone. I thought about what it would feel like to step out of the role I'd been cast in. Not dramatically, not angrily, just quietly. The realization came fully formed. If I wasn't family to them, then I didn't need to keep performing like I was. I didn't need to argue that point. I didn't need permission to stop. I packed slowly, not like someone running away, like someone being deliberate. Camera first, the good lens, a couple of memory cards, clothes that felt like me, not like someone visiting out of obligation. I lined everything up on the bed and noticed my hands weren't shaking. I called my best friend. She picked up on the second ring. I told her I was leaving town. I didn't explain why. I didn't have to. She asked where. I said, Paris, surprising myself with how easy it was to say out loud. She didn't laugh. She didn't question it. She said she'd help me book it and told me to send my dates. That was it. No speeches, no advice, just support. Later, as I zipped the suitcase closed, I felt something shift. I wasn't choosing distance to punish anyone. I was choosing space so I could hear myself think again. The difference mattered. At the airport the next morning, the world felt oddly neutral. No one knew me. No one expected anything. I boarded the plane surrounded by strangers and felt lighter than I had in years. As the city shrank below the window, I didn't feel like I was leaving something behind. I felt like I was finally stepping towards something I'd postponed for too long. This wasn't revenge. Not yet. It wasn't even defiance. It was the first boundary I'd ever set without explaining myself. And once that line was drawn, I knew things wouldn't go back to the way they were. Because the version of me that kept everyone comfortable at my own expense didn't fit anymore. The anniversary weekend arrived quietly for me. Paris woke up without knowing anything about my family. Lights slid between buildings. Scooters rattled past cafes setting out chairs. I stood at the window of my small hotel room, coffee warming my hands, and felt something unfamiliar settle in permission. No one here needed anything from me. No one was waiting to see what I would cover, fix, or smooth over. Back home, the party was already in motion. I didn't see it, but I could picture it perfectly. My mother would have insisted on white linens. My father would stand a little too stiff in his jacket, smiling for photos. The room would be filled with people who knew our family just well enough to admire it. A band in the corner, glasses clinking, laughter rising and falling on cue, and one chair missing. I hadn't planned anything dramatic. That part matters. I didn't wake up intending to make a statement. I didn't craft a message or rehearse a line. I went out that afternoon and did what I always do when I'm somewhere new. I walked until something caught my eye. The river looked like brushed metal under the late sun. Couples leaned against the railing. A street musician tuned his instrument testing notes softly. I lifted my camera and followed the light frame by frame. I wasn't trying to capture perfection. I was looking for honesty. Later, back in my room, I edited a few shots. Nothing heavy. No captions explaining my choices. No references to home. Just images of where I was and how it felt to breathe there. When I posted them, I wrote a simple line about chasing quiet moments and letting joy take its time. That was it. I put my phone down and went to dinner alone. The restaurant was small, tables close together. The smell of bread and butter hung in the air. I ate slowly, listening to conversations I didn't understand, watching people live their own stories without intersecting with mine. For once, solitude didn't feel like absence. It felt like space. Back at the party, my absence started to echo. At first, it was subtle. A cousin leaning over to ask my mother where I was. A neighbor glancing around the room confused. Someone assuming I'd arrive late. My mother smiled through it, offering vague answers. She's busy. Work stuff. The kind of explanations that sound reasonable until they don't. Then someone pulled out their phone. My post reached the room without context. Paris at dusk. Coffee by a window. Light falling exactly where it should. The question didn't come out loud right away. It passed from person to person, soft but persistent. Why isn't she here? My sister noticed the shift before anyone said anything directly. She kept adjusting things, straightening place cards, checking on the band, smiling too brightly. Control was her comfort, and control was slipping. By the time dinner was served, the room had changed temperature. Conversation stalled. Laughter didn't land the way it was supposed to. Someone asked my mother outright why her daughter wasn't celebrating with them. My mother's answer wavered. She smoothed it over, but the cracks were visible. I didn't know any of this yet. I was walking back to the hotel, the city warm around me, when my phone started vibrating. I let it ring. The second call came seconds later, then a third. I stopped on the sidewalk and watched the screen light up. Home. I didn't feel panic. I felt curiosity. I waited until the calls stopped before I went inside. The first message was from my mother, short, urgent. She asked me to call her as soon as I could. No explanation, just a plea wrapped in politeness. I waited. When I finally answered, her voice cracked before she finished saying my name. She told me people were confused. She said guests were asking questions. She said things were getting out of hand. I listened without interrupting, leaning against the window, watching headlights move along the street below. Then she said it. She said my post had caused a scene, that people were talking, that some had left early. She asked why I would do this to them. I asked her what exactly I had done. There was a pause. She said I knew what she meant, that I should take it down, that I should help them smooth this over. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse her. I just said I hadn't mentioned the party. I hadn't mentioned them. People were reacting to what they saw, not to anything I said. She didn't have an answer for that. The call ended with her asking me to think about the family. Minutes later, my sister called. Her tone was different, sharper. She said I'd humiliated them, that I'd made our parents look bad. She accused me of being selfish, of choosing attention over loyalty. She demanded I take the post down immediately. I asked her when she'd decided I wasn't family. She tried to talk over me, telling me I was twisting things, that I was being dramatic, that this wasn't how adults handle conflict. I waited for her to finish. Then I said it, quietly, clearly. Do we even know each other? She went silent. Not stunned silence, exposed silence. The kind that comes when someone realizes the script they've been using no longer works. She hung up without answering. My brother was next. His call came with structure. He told me I'd escalated something manageable. He said I should have come to them privately. He talked about image consequences, professionalism. He said my post could affect people in ways I hadn't considered. I told him I'd been considering them for years, through payments, through patience, through silence. I told him I was done being the solution to problems I didn't create. He sighed, the way he does when he thinks reason should win. He told me I was blowing things out of proportion. An hour later, he posted something vague online about priorities and loyalty. The comments didn't go where he expected. People asked why I wasn't invited if I'd help pay. People asked why family meant conditions. He didn't reply. The calls stopped after that. I slept that night with the window open. The city hummed, unconcerned with my family's discomfort. In the morning, sunlight traced a clean line across the floor. I felt rested. Not triumphant, just settled. Back home, the party unraveled quickly once the questions started. People left without saying much. The band packed up early. My parents were left with centerpieces and uneaten cake. The version of the evening they'd planned didn't survive contact with the truth. I didn't gloat. I didn't follow updates. I let distance do the work I'd been doing for everyone else all along. Later that day, my phone buzzed again. My mother's name lit the screen. This time, her voice was smaller. She asked me to come home. She said they wanted to fix things. She said they wanted everything back to normal. Normal, I realized, had always meant me paying and disappearing. I told her I wasn't angry. I told her I was just finished pretending. I said I was building something different now. She cried. I didn't move. When the call ended, I stood by the window again. Boats drifted along the river, steady and unbothered. I thought about how many times I'd stayed quiet to keep peace that only flowed one way. The confrontation hadn't been loud. There was no shouting match, no dramatic walkout. Just a few words spoken honestly, and a silence that finally did what my explanations never could. The days after that felt strangely light. Not easy, but lighter. The noise thinned out on its own. Messages slowed. Calls stopped coming in clusters. What remained was quiet that didn't demand anything from me. Back home, the story settled into something people could understand. Not rumors, not drama, just facts. I wasn't invited. I'd helped financially. Questions answered themselves. Friends of my parents grew distant, polite in a careful way. Invitations stopped arriving. Conversations shortened. The image my family had relied on no longer held without effort, and no one wanted to keep propping it up. My parents reached out again, softer this time. They said they wanted to reset. They didn't say sorry. They didn't acknowledge the exclusion. They just wanted things to feel familiar. I understood what they were asking for. Familiar had always meant my silence and my support. I didn't give them either. I stayed in Paris longer than planned. Not to avoid anyone, but because work started to find me there. A small gallery asked to see more. A magazine editor wrote to say my photos felt honest, like they weren't trying to impress anyone. I booked shoots. I answered emails that were about art, not obligation. When I thought about my family, it no longer felt sharp. It felt distant, like an old role I'd outgrown. I hadn't destroyed anything. I'd stepped out of a pattern that erased me. Peace didn't arrive with applause. It arrived quietly in mornings that belonged to me and work that asked for vision instead of sacrifice. For the first time, the aftermath wasn't something I had to clean up. I didn't win against my family. I didn't take anything from them. I simply stopped shrinking so they could stay comfortable. That was the real shift. Family isn't supposed to feel like a debt you keep paying just to stay included. And boundaries aren't punishment. They're clarity. If you've ever been excluded by the very people you kept showing up for, I want you to know this. Choosing yourself doesn't make you cruel. It makes you accurate. If this story hit close to home, share your experience in the comments and subscribe so you don't miss the next one.